Hey everyone, welcome again to the latest installment of The Way It Is. And I'm your host, Luca with Remax Service First Realty. And we are fortunate to have our guest today, Paige Agnew. And Paige is the Commissioner of Community Services with the City of Kingston, and formerly was the Chief Planner and Director of Planning, Building and Licensing Services for 6 years. Alongside her team in community services, Paige has the privilege of providing professional guidance, policy development, and strategy focused on propelling Kingston forward as a 21st century vibrant and sustainable city. Paige has made significant changes to the way the City of Kingston works with the community and reshaped a number of departments to provide a better service continuum. In a short period of time, she's become a key strategic leader within the City of Kingston. Paige's passion and vision have enabled her to find innovative solutions to significant community challenges with a focus on collaboration and relationship building. As the Commissioner of Community Services, Paige oversees planning services, building and enforcement services, heritage services, and Rideau Crest long-term care facility. This includes a staff team of over 300 leaders working within their respective disciplines, providing a variety of critical services to the community. Welcome, Paige.
Thank you for having me.
You've got to be tired every time you wake up in the morning. I got tired reading all of that. Holy, that's quite it's quite a feat and quite a job description there. So
I think we need to reduce the bio a little bit.
You're busy though. That's I guess right. That's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. Right?
Definitely a good thing.
So we don't know each other, but
No.
Are you? What's your relationship to Kingston? Are you from Kingston? Have you moved to Kingston? Tell us a little bit about your history, if you don't mind. So.
Well, I definitely like to think of myself as a Kingstonian now, but when I first moved here, I was told you have to live here for at least 10 years before you can even think about calling yourself a Kingstonian. And I know some longtime Kingstonians wouldn't even consider me still a Kingstonian. I moved here in 2005. I'm originally from Brantford, so in Southwest Ontario. And I've been here, about 15 or so years, 17 years. And I love it. I do feel like I'm a Kingstonian, but I know it's something you have to earn with time.
Well, I mean, that needle keeps moving. I've heard 20 years, I've heard 10, now I've heard 10. Yeah, I mean, you know what? If you live here and you're working here, then I think everyone deserves the right to be called a Kingstonian. So let's touch on, if you don't mind, I didn't realize that you were the chief planner
Yes.
for a while. And I guess even though you're now, in a different department per se, you still have a foot in that world, I guess, given what the description sort of alluded to. But given, of course, in my podcast, sometimes we go off topic and don't do real estate related things, but sometimes more often than not, we tie them into real estate related matters. So, and all the sound bites, and now the election's over and everything, we're all about streamlining municipal processes and especially on that development side and the planning side and everything else. Can you comment, if at all, and if you can't, I certainly understand, but where we were and where we are now, have you been able to sort of see differences, and can you speak to that?
Absolutely. So I started with the city near the end of 2014, and I came in as the chief planner at that time, and I served in that role until about 2021, technically. I became the Commissioner of Community Services just right before the pandemic hit in 2020. And as you can imagine, trying to recruit to replace myself during that time, it was very difficult. Nobody was really looking at wanting to move or change jobs because there was so much uncertainty. So I continued being the chief planner for about 18 months while I was also the commissioner. So and planning is still in my department. So I'm very connected and very involved in all of it still, even though technically I'm not the chief planner anymore. I have a new director that was hired in 2021, and he's doing a great job, but he and I work very closely together, and I'm still connected to the planning team. To say how much the city has changed in the time that I've been here, I mean, would be an understatement. And I think, we've been really fortunate to have a whole team of city leaders really working to promote change. And when I moved to the city in 2005, I remember I was in the private sector as a planner at the time, and I remember there's some articles that were printed about the city as it being like a quote unquote no city. it was difficult to get anything done. The city wasn't open to change and embracing new things, and it had that bit of that reputation outside of the city. And I think there's been so many of us that have been working really hard to change that, particularly over, the last number of years. For me, it's been about 8 years with the city, and it's really been about transforming from the ground up how we look at investment as a city, how we look at development and the importance of it, in really trying to build that sense amongst all of our staff of the importance of those relationships. And unfortunately, in Kingston, sometimes I think the word developer is, it's almost like a swear word. It's considered to be a bad thing, but the reality is we're all critical partners in the community, and the city can't be here without people willing to invest in it. So whether you're a small-time developer or someone that's been doing it for a long time, it's a critical part of what helps our community to be what it is, and it's a very much a necessary piece. So I've been working, I think, with the staff team for a long time and trying to enhance those relationships and open up the process of planning to be more transparent, more information sharing, trying to do more education awareness with the community, because it can be quite technical and confusing. And I think sometimes where new things are coming forward, that's where some of the fear and the resistance sets in. So working on those pieces and really trying to instill a critical skill set or mindset within the staff of, think about this as, if you were investing in something, like, let's make sure we're only asking for what we absolutely need. And I think even my experience as a private sector planner, bringing applications through what became my department in 2014, I saw there some of that uncertainty of, okay, let's just ask for that study because it's on the list, but do we really need that? What purpose is that study serving? And really tried to bring more of a practical business mindset to the work that we're doing here, while also, of course, having the respect and the integrity of the technical process that we operate under as planners within the context of Ontario. So we've come a long way. We still have ways to go, but I think, I've had an opportunity to speak at some conferences, be part of some of the Scotiabank, some of the ResCon things over the last couple of years. And I think there is a recognition that things are really happening in Kingston. And some of those invitations that I've had to speak about what we've been doing, I think are a reflection of that. But certainly we're committed on continuous improvement, and we still have a ways to go. And I think with the Ford government coming in again, I'm anticipating a lot more change.
Yeah, well, I know, and thank you for all that insight. And you're absolutely right. I mean, of course, being in real estate, I deal with investors and developers, and certainly, I mean, it is a dirty word, and the perception is that they're just these people out there just to line their pockets and get rich, and they don't give back to the community, which I don't think is the case. I mean, I'm not saying that there's always those that are self-interested, but majority I wouldn't think are like that. And I've had the mayor on a couple of times, and I know he's quite I would say not to put words in his mouth, but certainly pro-development, at least in the right ways. It's odd. It's funny, though, because that you mentioned that Kingston had developed a bit of a reputation outside its borders for a bit of a closed-minded process, if you will. But explain, if you could, and I don't want to get too bogged down in this, but it's one thing for a politician to pay lip service to it and say municipalities got to start streamlining. In effect, and you touched on it there, and some people may not have understood it, but the fact that you can eliminate the need for certain studies, because I know from helping certain clients with processes of development, there is literally 5 to 6 or 7 or a dozen studies that in terms of noise and light and So, I mean, that's one step. What other sort of technical steps are there that would help expedite an application process?
Well, I think that the primary thing, and it's something I'm quite proud of the work that we've done in the last 5 to 7 years on policy in particular. Like, I feel like we're really starting to, hit our stride. we're writing all of our own policy now. And when I came into the city in 2014, there was a very strong dependency on external consultants. So oftentimes, we had a lot of projects going on, and we had planners that were certainly involved in the projects, but more project managing consultants. So then, as you can imagine, talking about the Kingstonian point of view and really understanding our community, we had consultants that none of them really were within the city. Typically, they're from, GTA or maybe Ottawa, larger urban centers, that were writing the foundational planning policy for our city. And the work we've been doing over the last 5 to 7 years is really to do a critical rethink of that policy. And I think the changes that we're seeing in the amount of development, the amount of development we've seen over the last 4 years is a 50% increase, almost a 70% beyond anything the city had seen before that. And that's on, not just the residential side, it's on, the commercial institutional side as well, too. But it's a commitment to good policy, because when you have good policy that sets the foundation and really thinks about how to set up the city for success in identifying the right areas for development to go, that has the right development permissions, and that starts with our official plan and goes through into the zoning bylaw. I'm not sure if you're tracking it or not, but we just passed a new zoning bylaw for the city, which was 20 years in the making. It was a complete transformation of anything we've had before, and was unanimously passed by council, which, as you know, is not easy to do. So that was a big thing to get through. But I think, and we're going to be taking this mindset forward, because we are going to be looking at doing a major overhaul of our official plan, which is our big master planning document, is getting away from a sense of having to do site-specific analysis for every development application to writing policy in a way that gives direction and the right policy development permissions across the city to make good development in the right places easy. And you don't want to try to encourage development, but then inadvertently write policy that actually penalizes developers by having the process be too onerous. So we've been going through a philosophical, a learning, a capacity building process of reestablishing a new framework about how we look at our role as planners in the city and how we get to those outcomes. And it's been a matter of policy writing, which is a very lengthy process, but we've had some major wins and improvements in the last 3 to 4 years. And we're carrying that forward into the official plan review in 2023, which is the most important foundational document for any type of planning in the city. So I'm excited about that, but there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, no, and I'm excited to hear that, actually, and that's I don't think many would understand that or realize that, and you make excellent points. Why we and I know that experience where there was always the reliance on these outside consultants for the expertise when it should be built from within. So that's awesome. So let's get to your role now, community services, and obviously the pandemic has, I'm sure, created challenges of its own for that role. Because the pandemic has pulled the curtain back on a lot of gaps and a lot of disparities and widened those gaps. So, what are some of your top priorities, I guess, given what your role is today in that job?
Well, housing continues to be one of our most important top priorities. From a staff perspective, it's also one of course, council's priorities that they set within this term. I'm thankful that we exceeded the goal that council set for us in 2018. They're looking for, I think, 3,045 new dwelling units within their term of council, which was aiming to get us to that 3% vacancy rate. We've built over 4,500 at this point within this term. So we far exceeded that. But as you know, as someone in the real estate industry, we're still struggling with a low vacancy rate, and we're still struggling with affordability across the board. So it really speaks to the complexity of how you develop a healthy housing stock within the city that is available to people of all different means and economic backgrounds in terms of what they can afford. And we talk about it, we call it the housing continuum. It goes right down from, people experiencing extremes of homelessness and living in shelters all the way to the market-built rental and ownership within that continuum. And there's been a lot of work that we've put into developing housing, but the supply issue isn't enough alone. You have to have specific interventions at different points of affordability across the housing continuum. So we've been working on that, but through the pandemic, to your question, it's really exacerbated issues of homelessness and certainly housing vulnerability for many people in the community that perhaps were, just making it month to month. But if they lost their job, if they were furloughed for a period during the pandemic, it really created that additional instability, and that's impacted so many people. And the interventions required to address housing affordability and supply at that part of the continuum are different than what we need in terms of mid-level affordability versus, market affordability for rental and for purchase. So you've seen what's happened with the resale market, how the real estate market in Kingston. I think we've had some of the most significant price increases across the entire country at a time when now we're in a period of 6% inflation and lending rates just continuing to rise. So it's that remains our number one priority as a city is, and you've probably seen being an active Kingstonian, where we have growing pockets of individuals that are experiencing homelessness and have been living in the rough, whether at encampments at Bell Park or some other areas around the city. And just the degree of complexity associated with that and some of the other challenges that come with mental health and substance issues when people are dealing with trauma and instability, it's all wrapped in together. So that's definitely a big focus of what the last couple of years have been like, and trying to, keep us going as a city and keep us out of a deficit position, which there was a lot of work that went into figuring out how to do that while still keeping all of our council priorities going at the same time, and doing a lot of it in a remote model, which thankfully with technology we are able to adapt to. But it's going to remain a challenge for the city for a number of years to come. That's going to take a deep amount of commitment, which there is at the staff level, but certainly upper level government commitment as well. Because when you get into affordable housing, that's not typically something that's in the purview of municipalities, but has become increasingly so in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Well, especially because, it's all getting delegated from the top down, right? In terms of, and we'll see what Ford does with his new mandate. I mean, he talked a good game. We'll see if he delivers, but even still, I mean, all of the interventions, that you spoke of, these interventions, I mean, I fully am cognizant and appreciative of what that means. But at the end of the day, it's all about, you need money to subsidize anything that you're planning, right? And you're right. The municipality can't take it all on their shoulders. You need provincial subsidization. You need federal subsidization across the country. I mean, from every municipality, every region has its own challenge. Everybody's experiencing the same, maybe to varying degrees of severity, but certainly, I don't think there's any community in the country that's not experiencing some level of homelessness or some level of housing instability, food insecurity, go down the list. I noticed on the City of Kingston website, though, there was a couple of initiatives there under the community services. One was Spark. Can you tell us about that initiative and what that entails? Spark. Yeah. Was it? Okay. Maybe hold on a second. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but maybe I misread it.
No, that's not something that I'm working on specifically.
Well, hold on a second then. What did I read? Oh, well, then, you know what? It's, the heading is just community services, so it may not fall under your purview, but it says Spark, SPARK, the subsidy program for affordable recreation in Kingston reduces the cost of city-run recreational leisure programs.
Oh, sorry. Yes. So definitely that's more so under the recreation services, which isn't in my group, but definitely we have subsidization programs across the city for people of varying income. You have to certainly be able to meet the income or the lower income threshold. And then there's programs, and it's extended to transit as well too, so that there's services available to everyone. And I think, that notion of equity is very, very important. And it's one that's coming up not just through housing, but through access to services of things that people take for granted that, it's expensive. It's expensive to have kids. Everybody wants their kids to have, a healthy lifestyle and be able to pursue their passions and the things they're interested in. And that program, I think, is really about removing barriers to people's participation just based on, on income challenges that they may be experiencing.
Mm. Rideau Crest falls under your purview there.
It does.
And, I mean, you know what? I'm out of touch with it. My mother was in a nursing care facility in the GTA, and so how did Rideau Crest fare during the pandemic? I guess in terms of how long-term care, how the staff, the residents, and where is it today? I guess can you give us a snapshot of where that sits?
For sure, I would say I'm always proud to work with everybody I work with at the City of Kingston, but watching the Rideau Crest staff come together as a team over the last couple of years in the pandemic has been truly remarkable. Talk about commitment and leadership just across the board. And there's about 250 people that work at Rideau Crest. It's a 24/7 operation. And the amount of change, I mean, it's the same for many long-term care facilities. And of course, early in the pandemic, there was lots of stuff in the media about outbreaks in different facilities. We've had some small outbreaks, but it's been very minor. And by and large, the facility and the resident care there has been excellent through the entire pandemic. The staff have been amazing. If anything, the biggest thing I worry about is burnout of those individuals that have been working so hard. And I think that's true across the whole healthcare continuum. There's lots of stuff in the media about that every day, but the residents have done well. The families have been really great to work with and certainly very understanding, because there were protracted periods of time where people couldn't see their loved ones. We were able to supplement visits with virtual technology, but it's not the same thing as having the person to person. But by and large, the team that's there, they're really incredible. I would have to say, Luca, it's been amazing. It's been amazing. And the home has done very well through the last couple of years of challenges that we've all been navigating. So thanks for asking about that.
No, well, I appreciate the good news. That's great. So, and I won't keep you because I'm sure you've got a full slate of meetings and things to do other than talk to me. But I guess, you're from Brantford, you were in the private sector, now you're in the public sector, you've been at it a while. What, I dare say there's been days when you kind of, I don't know, I won't say regretted your decision, but maybe thought twice about the change in careers. And but I'm just, because listen, trust me, I understand that world, but I'm just saying, what drives you every morning to get up? What makes you, what's your passion? What makes you want to get up and do what you're doing?
That's a great question. I would say, yeah, for sure. Like anybody working in any job, you have days where you're just kind of like, oh my God, what did I do? But I would say, number one, the people I work with. And I think I'm even guilty of it myself. Before I worked for municipal government, I maybe had a perception of it being very bureaucratic, slow, those types of things. And I can say from personal experience over the last 8 years, it's the absolute opposite. The people I work with every day are so committed. The volume of work here is immense, and they're very difficult jobs, but people are here because they love the city and they're passionate and they really want to help people. The thing that I love most about this job is that you get to see the direct impact of your work. Certainly I've worked in different sectors, but being able to experience the impact of decisions or work or projects that you're working on and seeing it really create positivity in the community. I mean, what's better than that? It's absolutely awesome. But they are tough jobs. Certainly working in the political realm is tough as well, too. Just from a staff perspective, we don't have final decisions resting with us in many cases. So all we can do is our due diligence and provide the best information possible. But at the end of the day, our council is making decisions. So and that's tough sometimes from a staff perspective. If you work on something for a long time and maybe it's not successful at council, it can be difficult to drag yourself to work the next day and keep on going. But the people that work for the city are really committed, and they love the city and they want good things for the city. And that's what keeps me coming back every single day.
Well, and that's great to hear, because you're right. As we talked about the perception of that the world has about developers in Kingston, and yes, on the other foot is that perception of municipal employees and being entrenched in a bureaucratic process, and sort of just putting time in type of thing, But it's refreshing to hear that these people are motivated, that there's care and concern, and that because I don't think very few people understand the processes that take place, and like you said, the amount of work that does get allotted to these portfolios or these jobs, for sure. So
for sure, there's a lot of technical parts of the planning process that quite frankly, A, are boring, B, are hard to understand, and people are living their lives and are busy. So the amount of commitment, I mean, there is a very committed general sense from our community of wanting to be involved in projects and following them, especially on the planning side, participating at meetings, which can be daunting in itself. So really applaud the engagement of the community. I didn't really feel like that in other communities where I've lived, that I've noticed it's very different in Kingston. But, to your point, it's all about relationships, and people are a lot more similar than they're dissimilar. But, you got to get out of your box and get out there and, mix it up with people and, lower down the line of defenses and, be open to conversations, even if you disagree on things. But, essentially we all need one another in the community. And the one part that I've really worked hard with our staff on is really having people make a greater connection to the land economics considerations of all of the work we do in planning. And although the Ontario planning framework doesn't really enable you to look at a pro forma of a project or the justification as a reason to support or not support it from a planning perspective, because land use is about compatibility versus land economics, you can't ignore the importance and the understanding of the land economics connections. And we've been working to integrate land economics analysis into scenario testing our policy before we pass it. And that's something we're committed to doing. Because again, if you're writing policy that can't be built because the land economics just don't make sense, then you're really no further ahead, and your policy is really not going to achieve anything. I'm just curious on your side, what do you see as the major challenge? I mean, you work in real estate, you've dealt with like a boom over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for me as a person that's working on these pieces to keep in mind going forward?
I'm going to tell you, I'm actually very. It's refreshing to hear your comments and some of the insights that you're providing, because I think the perception is that it's just the layering. It's the layers and the layers of where, and when you're an entrepreneur, and I can't speak for all, but, those that are in business, everyone wants to streamline the process, and everybody wants to remove the layers, and it's just get to the point, let's get on with it, right? And not be bogged down in the minutia of the technicalities and everything else. And I understand there has to be checks and balances. There's no question about it, because you can't have people obviously running willy-nilly all over the place and doing whatever they want. But so I guess, from my personal perspective, and speaking to those that I know that do development and everything else, I think that was sort of the biggest critique, is just the layers and the time and the timelines, right? In terms of response times and getting things back in a timely manner. And again, I understand things need to be researched and looked over and checked once and checked twice. But I would say, just from a bird's eye view, that would sort of be the sort of number one thing. But I'm actually blown away by some of the comments you've made. I'm thrilled that we're writing our own policy. I'm thrilled that you're taking into account all these factors, land economics and all these other things, in terms of making policy something that's going to be a tool versus an impediment, and because in the past, and I know the zoning's been changed, and I know the density requirements are being changed, because to meet the needs of our community and to meet the needs of, like you said, that we're in a housing crisis in terms of a shortage of housing for everyone along the continuum, right? So No, those are all positive things to me, and having not met you, I'm very impressed. So I applaud you for the work you're doing, and I wish you success going forward. So I think Kingston's in good hands. So
thank you.
Yeah.
I would say that, the two most important things, and maybe some of this because my family, I grew up with a small business. We had a builder supply. So from the time that I was a toddler, I've been working with developers, builders coming into our store, been in the construction industry in one facet or another, basically my entire life. And, I had some of that drilled into me by my dad as being a small business owner. But I think, to your point, the two best things that we can offer to people are certainty and timing. Certainty of what's allowed, so that if I'm buying land, I know what their permissions are, or I know what I can build there. So I'm not guessing and having to have a factor in there of what that's going to be. If there's an approval that's required, what is the likelihood of that happening? And to your point, timing is absolutely essential. Timing is money, and it's not experienced the same way, even across the development community per se. Everybody is in a different boat. And I think, to your point, especially about the small and medium business owner, their threshold for being able to cash flow a situation and deal with all of those pressures when they're trying to open a business or build something new versus a larger scale developer that maybe has, immense land holdings. They have a different cash flow perspective. They have different lending rates. So all of those things, those are things that we're talking about from a staff perspective and really trying to factor in, looking at, our processes of how we can make things better, how we can do things more efficiently. But one of the number one things that I'm worried about, and I know it's the same for other municipalities, is there's a shortage of skilled labor. So not just on the trades front in the construction industry, but from our perspective, trying to maintain the staff levels that we need to be able to process things is it's a constant challenge. And I know that other municipalities across the province are facing that. And we're looking at that from a recruitment perspective, and certainly looking at how do we make the ideal work environment to retain the staff we have, because without those staff, we can't process anything. And that's our planners, it's our building officials too, another huge area, and that department's under my purview as well. So, we're working to try to strategize that to stay ahead of what's happening, but it's all happening so quickly. So lots of challenges ahead, but we all have to work together. That's one thing I know for sure, because no entity can do it on their own, and it takes everyone.
You're 100% right, and I empathize with those challenges because they're only going to get worse before they get better. I hate to be sort of the harbinger of pessimism, but we're lacking in and even from those generational gaps now in these kids coming out of whatever level of education they're coming out of, not wanting to go into these programs, whether it be at the post-secondary level or at the collegiate level or what have you, to fill, like you said, to get the training, to get the skills, to get the and those are viable jobs. I've had guests on the podcast before where, trades and skills and urban planning or what have you, those are things that the world needs to more of and can go into those directions, and programs that should be offered and subsidized and get people into those programs. I mean, it's one thing to have higher learning. I'm all for that. And, that serves a role, but we need people to do the jobs at the end of the day, right? Or we're all stuck, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, listen, I won't keep any longer. I really appreciate your candor. I appreciate your comments. It's been very enlightening. It's been very insightful. And I wish you every success. I really do. And maybe down the line, we'll catch up again and have a recap and see where we are in a year or so from now. So
I'd be happy to. And if I could just leave with one message, is that, reach out if you're working with people that are interested. We want to be in business. The city of Kingston wants to be the community of choice. And if there's anything that I can ever do to help people that are looking at the city, any clients you're working with that have interest, you can find me very easily on the internet, on the city's website. I'm kind of right there, and you can click on me and email me directly. We're here to work with you. So please reach out. We want to be in business with you, and we want to make our community as vital as possible. It takes everyone. So thanks for having me today, Luke. I really appreciate it. And reach out to me anytime you need anything.
I certainly will, Paige. You be careful what you wish for. So I thank you for that, and that's great. You have a great rest of the day, and
yeah, you too.
we'll catch up again. All right.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Take care.